I don't know about you, but I have the feeling that the Pokemon Company serves us every year the same menu, and we're constantly surprised, scattered, and wondering what's gonna happen next. Let's take a look at how the Pokemon Company is managing this whole situation on the market right now, this FOMO, the massive popularity of the sets, how the Pokemon Company is handling it, and what history can teach us regarding what's ahead of us in the coming months. All right, I'm proposing a thought experiment because I've started slowly putting this together in my head. I like to look for certain patterns in my head that keep repeating. And I've noticed a very strong analogy between how the Pokemon Company handled the product in 2025 and how they're doing in 2026. And what unique things come to mind here? First of all, let's take a look at how both of these years began. Which sets did we start the years 2025 and 2026 with? 2025 was, of course, the release of Prismatica. As for Prismatica, there have already been a few videos on this channel because it was a set that wasn't just phenomenal, but great. A great lineup of special illustration rares, all the EV evolutions, a holiday set, so only supplementary products plus ETBs. While all of that generally generated a very, very, very large amount of hype. One thing that amuses me in all of this is that I remember very well in January of last year when Prismatica ETBs were available, well, in Europe for $110, $120 pretty commonly. In the States, they were even cheaper, mainly thanks to those bundles from Costco, Sam's Club, and so on. But it was a price at which it seemed many people were reluctant to buy. The MSRP argument was made, the reprint argument was made, and that buying at this price isn't worth it because we're starting from a very high level. What I find surreal and what happened to me yesterday is that I happened to go on Reddit. I like reading those financial and investment threads there, and I came across, among others, a thread about Prismatica ETBs, which at $180 are described as a no-brainer. And that's very interesting because it's hard to actually agree with two things at once. That those ETBs for 110, 120 euros were definitely too expensive. And now at 170 or 180, they are. A no-brainer play. I'm not saying that's a bad price for Prismatica. On the contrary, I think the set is so phenomenal with such potential for years to come. You basically just have to look at what's happening right now with the 151 ETBs, for instance, which were very widely available, even last year, still around 140, 150 euros, but even then, many people claimed that this price was already too high because they remembered ETBs at $50, $60. And that's how this cycle, especially on these premium products, often looks. It's a little bit funny. But it's impossible not to notice the analogy here between what we had in 2025, which was Prismatic, and what we have in the year 2026, which is Ascended Heroes. Ascended Heroes is another expansion where we have a sensational lineup of special illustration rares. Sure, we don't have the EV evolutions, which are like the commercial mascots of the whole franchise, but we have Gengar instead, we have Dragonite, we have 2 different Pikachus in the set, poor pull rates, another supplementary product. And again, history repeats itself. The hype is huge, scalpers are having a field day. And the ETBs available now for 110, 120 euros, which are, again, being described as too expensive. Will history repeat itself? History likes to repeat itself. And here too, I think that this price right now for the Ascended Heroes ETB, if someone actually intends to hold this product for years, isn't that bad. But what I'm getting at in my argument isn't whether it's worth buying Ascended Heroes today or not, but I'd just like to point out a certain pattern of releases, very cleverly managing the hype for Pokemon cards. Because the Pokemon Company has seen exactly what's going on for a long time now. This hype was actually engineered for Prismatic Evolution, and then at the point when there was a lot of frustration, lack of product availability, we had Journey Together. What was Journey Together? A good question, which also somewhat answers those allegations or conclusions of many people observing the market about how a weak set will kill the hype and drop products to the prices we saw for things like Temporal Forces, Paradox Rift, Stellar Crown. My answer to that is sets like Journey Together, or what we had just now, we have Perfect Order, aren't made to wreck the market, but to stifle the FOMO a little bit. Look, Journey Together was an available expansion. I opened a booster box myself with my son, even though booster box prices are such that we don't usually open full booster boxes, but Journey Together was available. It was available close to the suggested price. People could open those boxes. For scalpers and investors, it wasn't a particularly interesting product, if only because of what was put into it. There were a lot of those sweet, pretty cards. Lily's Claire Fairy as the main chase. 150 to 160 euros at launch, currently closer to 100 euros. You can get a card with decent centering like that. Personally, I thought Journey Together would be a better set. Articuno appeared there, among others, which I thought would boost the set as an illustration rare. In a similar way, maybe not on the scale that Paldea Evolved was boosted by those illustrations, especially Magikarp, but at least on the scale that Twilight Masquerade was boosted by Eevee. History showed that Journey Together wasn't boosted by Articuno, didn't become a particularly popular set, and was forgotten. So we have an answer for those wondering, what happens if the Pokemon Company releases a worse set? Well, we had Journey Together, which absorbed a lot of that hype from Prismatic, and let the market cool down. And let's see what we have in 2026. Perfect Order. Visually, this set, in my opinion, and not just mine, looks terrible. Of course, it draws heavily from Pokemon Legends ZA, the game where these characters appear, including Zygarde, who is the main Pokemon there. But again, this set isn't built on big bangers, but rather on pretty cards. There's Meowth, there's Clevable. Generally Pokemon that are more attractive to, let's say, casual collectors, teenage boys and girls. These are cards that are just fun to open. The experience with a set like this is pleasant, but the hype is slowly dying down. But let's take a look at what happened in 2025. Namely, after Journey Together, which was that light soft set released in the spring, we had Destined Rivals. Destined Rivals, which absolutely redefined what a regular set release can look like. We saw completely new market behavior. Booster box prices didn't drop at launch. On the contrary, they started climbing. And although specific restocks suppressed that price from 600 or 500 euros down closer to 400 euros, we recently had a restock, and you could get some boxes at that 400 euro price point. Well, but it was a set that was in short supply from the start, and the hype for it was massive. So how does that compare to the year 2026? Let's see what Pokemon serves us after Perfect Order, which, as we've discussed, isn't exactly a major event or a set we're particularly looking forward to this year. The next expansion is Chaos Rising. Chaos Rising is interesting because it introduces a very popular Pokemon as the face of the set, Greninja. Greninja isn't a Kanto Pokemon, but it's slowly crawling into that top 10 that drives the franchise in terms of popularity among collectors, primarily. We have a huge overproduction of Kanto Pokemon there, but we're already seeing Rayquaza, Lugias also hovering around those themes. And definitely Greninja, who, thanks in part to the anime and appearing in many key situations, is becoming a sort of Pokemon joining the ranks of that Pokemon Olympus. Chaos Rising gives him the full stage to really be able to shine. And it's in a format that worked very well with 151, meaning we have 2 illustrations in the evolution line and a special illustration rare, which, well, is meant to be the main chase, the banger, further boosted by a gold card, which we didn't have in 151. And additionally, some illustrations that will hopefully bolster the set in terms of its depth, including Ampharos, a popular Pokemon in Tauros who might not be especially popular, but, well, is also a Kanto Pokemon, and Kanto illustrations will always be attractive in some way, at least given how the market looks right now. So since Ascended is like a Prismatic 2.0, a Perfect Order Journey Together 2.0, will Chaos Rising turn out to be the new Destined Rivals? I would, however, maintain a certain level of caution here. Destined Rivals was an exceptionally deep expansion. We had very strong special illustration rarity. Besides Mewtwo, there was also Moltres, Nidoking, Yeyu, Giovanni appeared on special illustration rares. Very large, cool depth from the illustration rares. We had Blaziken there, we had Typhlosion, we had also references to Kanto illustrations. All of this means that Chaos Rising, at least for now, comparing it to the cards we already see in Ninja Spinner, won't match the hype that was served up for Destined Rivals. But does that mean it'll be a weak set? In my opinion, absolutely not. In my opinion, Chaos Rising will be a less popular set than Destined Rivals, but we're also at a different point in the market. Let's remember that over the year, a lot of people have joined who would also like to play around with these cards. And the allocation right now, only somewhere in terms of speculation, it seems it will be higher than for Perfect Order, but not significantly higher. That means we'll probably get 30, maybe 40% more boxes than Perfect Order, but they likely won't be the numbers in which the ME1, ME2 stock appeared. If only because the Pokemon Company is very, very busy printing good quantities of the 30th anniversary, because they simply want to ensure a good supply of the product there. So what does that mean for Chaos Rising? If we have a set that will definitely be significantly better than the one we have now, and its supply will be a bit larger, and the price history, behaviors, and sentiments show that this set could be very, very popular. Will it reach 400, 450 euros per box as quickly as Destined Rivals? Probably not. But will the price that we'll have in pre-orders for Chaos Rising before the release be bad? I would say to look at history to see how it looked in the case of those main sets that were expected to be quite hot, like Surging Sparks, Destined Rivals. It showed that taking an interest in these products at the time of pre-orders is a good strategy. Maybe these products will be available even a bit cheaper later. Maybe on restocks, the price will mostly level out with the pre-orders, but I wouldn't expect a particularly big drop. If only because we see how the Pokemon Company tries to manage this hype and throw in products so that proven models work. And the whole model is simply easily transferable to subsequent years. Chaos Rising will be soon on yyyy.cardhorizon.com. We'll have some products for you guys. If you want to be sure that a box at a good price makes it to your shelf, we warmly invite you to our website. And we'll definitely be keeping an eye on what's happening with Chaos Rising and how the lead up to the 30th anniversary will look. And we'll talk about it here.